And we are recording.
Wonderful.
We have quorum, so let's get started. I will call the meeting to order at 6 p.m. We will start with the Pledge of Allegiance and the Goethe Pledge. So
Let me share screen real quick. Oh, can you enable that?
Mute.
Ah.
all right, please stand. Place
Hold
your right
on.
hand over your heart. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, Casey and Biggie for the Goethe Pledge.
As a citizen of the world, I will follow Goethe's circle of learning. Curiosity opens my mind, ideas lead to knowledge, responsible choices show respect, cooperation strengthens others, learners are courageous, empathy creates community.
Als ein Bürger dieser Welt folge ich dem Kreis des Lernens. Neugierig, ideenreich, respektvoll, kooperativ, mutig, empathisch.
Thank you, Biggie. All right, moving on to roll call. I don't see Frank. Casey, if Frank joins, if you can just give us a ping so we can note it for the meeting minutes.
Will do.
Sam?
Present.
Pete?
Here.
Katrin? Can we get that?
Apologies, present.
Thank you. All right. I'd like to make a
You're dropped out on us. We lost your audio. Yes, here. No audio. Nope. We lost your audio, Yasir. Can you hear us? Oh, there
Can
you are.
hear me? Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Well, that was weird. Okay. I'd like to make a motion to approve the agenda as presented. Is there a second?
Second.
That is from Pete. All in favor? Samantha?
Yes.
Pete?
Yes.
Katrin?
Yes.
And it is a yes for me. Public comment. Do we have any members of the public? And Casey, do you want to read to us the little disclosure, please?
Yes. The public may comment on any item that is on the agenda or any other item that is in the board's jurisdiction. Members of the public who wish to comment during the board meeting may use the raise hand tool on the Zoom platform. Individual comments will be limited to 3 minutes, and the total time for this purpose shall not exceed 30 minutes per meeting. If an interpreter is needed for comments, they will be translated to English, and the time limit shall be 6 minutes. Individuals may speak 1 time per subject. The Board of Trustees reserves the right to mute or remove a member of the public if comments or actions during the board meeting, if comments or actions disrupt the board meeting. Board members are prohibited from responding to or commenting on matters raised by the public that are not on the agenda. And there are no raised hands in Zoom at this time.
Can we confirm that no one wanted to make a comment? I know we have a couple members of the public, so just give an extra second.
And still nothing.
All right, let's move on. I'd like to make a motion to approve the special board meeting minutes from August 2nd. Sam?
I had provided Chris with a short amendment to a portion that I had put in. Chris,
Yes.
Has that been shared? Or?
Yeah, let me go ahead
Okay.
and share that right now. And I will, it's my minutes. I need to go here. Give me just a second. So we had an item right here. Oops, right here.
Second paragraph.
Yeah, the one, well, where it says SE inquires as to whether further negotiations of teacher salaries are off-schedule contracts within the limits as presented could be delegated by the Board of Trustees to the Executive Director if this type of contract is expected to be presented regularly. So that was a little bit of a shift from what was in the minutes, but Sam had felt that clarified her point. So we switched that in there, wanted to bring it to everyone's attention.
Did you, sorry, how recent was this change? Because that seems like what I read earlier.
This was early this morning.
Okay, yeah, okay, perfect. So I saw that. All right.
Yeah, just wanted to be sure if somebody read it earlier in the weekend.
Okay. If there's nothing further from another board member, could we go to the vote? Sound good? All right, Sam?
Yes.
Pete?
Yes.
Katrin?
Yes.
All right. We are now going to move on to the ED report. But before we do so, I would just like to say a welcome to our 2 new parent elected board members. We are so blessed to have you guys join this group. Sam is the counsel of a very important organization in Marina Del Rey. I'll let her talk for a few minutes about her background, and Katrin has a very, very impressive HR background, and currently she is working at UCLA Extension. So with that being said, I just want to introduce you guys. If you want to just say a few things, that would be great. Sam, you want to get us started?
Sure, thanks. I'm Samantha Eisner. You can call me Sam. I have a son, Alexander Kastman. He's going into 2nd grade at Goethe. We joined the school when he was in kindergarten. And in my professional life, I work as a deputy general counsel at a company called ICANN, the Internet Corporation for Assigned Names and Numbers, where we coordinate the policy setting for the internet. And one of the things I do in my professional life is I do a lot of corporate governance and board governance work. So I'm really excited to join the board and be part of service to Goethe in this way. Thanks.
And Katrin?
Yes. Hi, everyone. My name is Katrin Kaler. I am the mom of Sawyer. Sawyer is now coming into kindergarten here at Goethe. Our first year was TK, virtual, and then hybrid. Professionally, I'm the head of human resources at UCLA Extension here in Westwood. And my background is in human resources and organizational development. Originally, I am from Germany and moved to the United States in 2012. So being able to get a bilingual education, internationally minded education through Goethe for my son means a lot to me.
Oh, thank you, Katrin. All right, Chris, sorry to take your thunder, but we are ready for the ED report.
Thank you. And welcome to our 2 board members and to our returning board members as well. It's great to have you here. We're off and running, getting ready for a new year. So that's what I want to talk about mostly in the report today, is thinking towards the new year. And as I usually do, I start out with enrollment. Of course, we don't have enrollment yet. We're until day 1, and we know who is actually here, but we're tracking it as we go. And so the first item is that we have a bit of a drop from where we had our budget number at 424, that we're currently just under 400 after the summer drop. We usually have a drop like that that's a little more precipitous than we would have liked. But now we've been drawing from wait lists, and we're working to build those numbers back up and enrolling as we go. Sorry about that. The most common reasons that we're seeing is families leaving the state or country. That had been the issues of folks leaving that we knew about. We did have some recent, and I've been recent like today, over the weekend, recent withdrawals due to COVID concerns. So the Delta variant is definitely an issue families are concerned with. We'll talk a little bit about more about that later on as we go in a couple of the other items that are on the agenda. But it has had some effect on budget or on the enrollment here, which of course does lead to budget. We expect our enrollment should stabilize by about the second or third week of school, which is fairly typical. Although in these times, nothing's particularly typical, and there may be opportunities to find families who've chosen other different options. Some people did homeschooling options and different types of things that we may be able to draw some folks back as well, or reach out to those who are new families. So we will continue to do that. The reopening update. First and foremost,
can we is it all right if it's all right with the board if we can just ask questions as you kind of cover each topic? That way,
sure,
we're not holding on to it.
Sure.
I have a few questions. So it's concerning that we're so low. That's close to, that's almost a 5. That's a big drop from our projections. I understand the families leaving state country, some recent withdrawals due to COVID. So is that because we're not offering distance as part of the program?
Yeah, well, the statewide is not offering distance as an option. The only way to provide that is through independent study. And so that is one of the topics on the conversation today, is an independent study policy that relates to how we could add or bring on a new program, but that program will also likely cost us through added hires, as well as the potential of an outside agency working with someone who works for our school. So we can talk through that a little bit more when we talk about independent study policy.
That's fine. I would really, so you said enrollment will stabilize by the second week. I would like to see some more information regarding why we're not hitting that budget, specifically actual numbers on how many families have left and the withdrawals. Would that be possible for you to provide us at for the next board meeting?
Oh yes, definitely.
Okay, thank you. I will then defer to Sam.
Thanks. No further questions from me on this point.
Okay, Pete.
So, without seeing the breakdown, but my guess is that the largest waiting lists are at probably kindergarten and first grade, and that's particularly likely the case because I know there's been some talk of systematically parents whose kids were either in preschool or kindergarten having them repeat those grades, having them repeat kindergarten again. So my question is whether this is enough of a drop to consider shifting to opening up more seats in the lower grades if there's demand. This is a pretty big drop, and my concern would be if it drops much more, that that's a fairly big budget impact. A and B, if we shift to the lower grades, I understand that's a hassle, but it does build up some clientele moving forward, as we always lose grades, kids across the grades over time anyway. So I think it's something for everyone to consider at what point we think about that more seriously.
Yeah, and just to respond to that, yeah, that is definitely something we could consider. the issue that we're facing is we're just seeing this literally in the last couple days.
Sure.
So we don't have great data of exactly where things fall, but we will have that, and it could be one of the things that is looked at. We certainly will dive into our wait lists to fill the classes that we currently have, and then we can look at what other options are from there.
Thank you, Katrin.
I agree with you, Yasir, in that I think it would be helpful to take another look at the specific reasons why enrollment is lower. And I was wondering, and building on what you said, if we conduct sort of exit interviews with families who decide not to come back for fall to better understand the reasons why they made that decision.
Yeah, Chris and I spoke about that on several occasions. So I'm glad that you mentioned that, Katrin, because I think that's really, really crucial. Everyone hates surveys, but exit interviews are really, really important, especially, with such large numbers. And so, Chris, if it would also be possible, if you could give us a draft of what that looks like at our next board meeting, I think that would be great.
Can we talk about that a little bit more? Because as far as I know, we've had lists of reasons. I mean, trust me, I'm a big fan of data, but my concern is that there's a lot of stuff going on, and especially right now, and obviously it's gonna be too late for exit interviews because these people have left. But secondly, we've had similar sorts of things in the past, and we've never done anything with it. And so unless someone decides, or we decide specifically what our responses to those interviews, it's just collecting information that we've put in a closet, and it's just taking time that Chris could be using for other things. So, just collecting data for data's sake is not so useful.
I think we should talk about it. I personally found exit interviews, in my experience, valuable but the thing is, we're also the board, and we can. So let me take a step back. And it could be that I'm just not recollecting. I don't know when we have taken action based on why people are leaving. The majority of my recollection for the last year and a half has been that students are leaving because they're going out of state. My conversation with Chris, as far as the exit interviews, Chris, when did we talk about it? I think we talked about it in June or something, when a few parents that you and I both knew were leaving, and they seem like totally devout Goethe parents, and they had several kids attending in the school. And I thought it would be of value if we actually posted those questions and the board took some sort of meaningful action. So I'll just stop there. Sam, do you have any thoughts? Or Chris, you too?
This is Sam. I agree with the thought that there's value in understanding, if we can, why people are leaving, and particularly if it's something that we can impact. But I also agree with what Pete says, that there's so many other things happening. But I think that this also possibly fits a bit into our demographic conversation that we discussed, maybe delving into a bit more in our board retreat. So maybe we merge that conversation.
Oh, I think that's a really good idea. Pete, what do you think?
Yeah, I think that's fine in terms of discussing it more. I think, and perhaps the way to approach it is, question one is, if you're leaving the state or country, then there really is nothing else to ask. I mean,
right.
You're leaving the state or country, why, asking questions about the program are rather irrelevant. But if they're leaving and moving to another school within the state or within within LAUSD, well, then certainly there might be something that would be programmatically important. So, perhaps there's a way of mitigating the extra work, but still getting some information.
Katrin?
Yeah, as an HR professional, I can tell you guys that once a decision has been made, an employee made up their mind, or in these cases a family, to move on, you'll find it surprising how open and how ready they are to provide feedback that potentially under other circumstances they would not be ready to share. And I think I've always found exit interviews to be a very valuable source of information. Oftentimes you just need to monitor them. There is no concrete and immediate need to take action. If you monitor them, watch out for red flags, watch out for things that are immediately actionable that we can improve as a school, is highly valuable. And I do agree that we should not collect data that we are not ready to act on.
Okay, so I think we've discussed that. And Chris, are you clear on your direction?
Yeah.
Good?
Yeah.
All right, reopening plans.
Okay, just to give you a sense of where we're going is that we are returning to full-time on campus with all students. And that is has been our exactly what we've been saying as we did 4 different town halls, and especially in Town Hall 3 and Town Hall 4, as we started to look at the coming year, we spoke to that very clearly, that was our direction. And that has certainly been the direction of the state of California from the governor and the legislature in the way that they have set up the new school year. So we've put our resources, we're a small single school, and we've put our resources into reopening full-time on campus for all students. The feedback we've gotten on that has been extremely positive. And it's been anecdotal, but it's been extremely positive in terms of families thrilled with the idea of not having only a few hours a day or only a few days a week, or all the different variations that hybrid presented for on-campus learning. And so that's where we're going. At the same time, we are very cognizant of trying to be safe in the way we roll this out. So the main point for us is that we have COVID testing for all students and staff, which is happening weekly. We're beginning with a baseline test. We actually did our baseline test for staff last week because they're coming on campus this week. And we are doing for everyone, including students, this week on Thursday and Friday. And we'll continue with weekly on-campus testing. We also have a local clinic that is tied in with our system, where it's very simple. If for some reason someone missed it or has to retake a test or whatever the reason, they can do so. So that's related to kind of the central point of being able to stay out ahead of things. But we have multiple layers of protection. So testing is a part of that. We also have we staggered the start times more than we had in previous times. We've got face masking, and it is a requirement from LA Unified that face masks are worn inside and outside on campus, exceptions being for when people are eating or drinking. And we will have, of course, nutrition and snack, and that kids will at lunchtime where kids will be doing just that. We also provide, just as we learned in the spring, we can provide mask breaks. We can kids can step outside and take a mask break for a moment, and those kind of things. We've also still have our MERV 13 filtering for the classrooms, which was a huge and very expensive upgrade that was made on the air conditioning systems to upgrade the filtering on that. And we'll have hand washing protocols and daily sanitation of classrooms. So all those things layered together are protective. We are literally up and running with our new teachers. We have a new middle school teacher, a new 5th grade teacher, and a new 4th grade teacher that are here. And they were actually here today on campus doing their orientation. And tomorrow, all of our teachers will be returning for our first day feedback. So we're looking forward and excited about that. We've got obviously a ton of things left to do to get the classrooms and the campus ready in the next week, but we're excited about it and ready to go. Did you want to ask questions
Yeah, let's
each round?
If that's all right.
Sure.
Sam, any questions?
No, not on reopening. Thanks.
Pete,
Nope, nothing for me.
Katrin?
No questions either.
All right, thank you. All right, and the GPA update.
So Allison Farrell could not be here. She says she will be here with us in September. But I did want to let you know that that we have been working with GPA throughout the summer, and their new executive team is all in place and ready to go. We've been trying to work through what activities we can do, what can't we, what things we can't do and have to shift around. And we're also thinking what's outside of the box to really build community in a way that's meaningful with some of the restrictions that we have currently. So we'll continue to work through that. And we have we did a family get together on this past Saturday that GPA sponsored, and it was nice. There were, I don't know, it's hard to count, but I would say about 100 people that were there, and it was great to see great to see so many folks there. I'm gonna keep moving forward if that's okay. The Prop 39 update. I want to give you guys a little sense of where we stand, which is we have not yet finalized the alternative agreement, but we are extremely close to finalizing that agreement. So I'm highly confident that we will be all signed off and not have any LAUSD issues there. In fact, we met today regarding our shared use agreement with the UTLA site representatives and the Marina Del Rey principal. And it was a very productive meeting, and it all ties in together for both shared use agreement and the alternative agreement. Related to that, we are planning for a very aggressive drive for intent to enroll forms for our fall recruiting season. And that is, we do our application on November 1st for Prop 39. And the key piece to that, or a key piece to that is the intent to enroll forms. And so we will be really making that a high priority, particularly at the kindergarten level, also at the other entry level that we have, which is 6th grade. So those are the two that we'll be most focusing on, but we certainly will be doing intent to enrolls with all current students as well as outreach. So that's a fall project. And that's where we stand right now.
I will just give a few minutes, Chris. I know Sam and Katrin are new. Do you guys have any questions about Prop 39 and what Chris just was talking about? Or if so, please, there is.
Thank you, Yasir. I do not have questions, as Chris was able to provide some background information and context.
Okay, good. Sam?
Same. He provided me with the same background, so I appreciate that.
Thank you, Chris. All right, Chris, you can feel free to move on.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Pete. You didn't have any questions about Prop 39.
I'm fine, thanks.
You're all good.
All right.
Okay. So the last thing that I have, and I'm going to let me see. I'm sorry. I'm going to be turning this over in a moment to Casey and Scott. But we're going to be giving you the iReady results light version. version. You're going to be getting a more detailed information, particularly about student groups that we were unable to pull from the system because as we were doing that, it was being turned over for the new year. And so we've been unable to grab the reports over the last days. And as a result, we're going to have to push that until September. But I apologize for that. But to give you an idea of what we have been doing, we've got a couple quick slides for you with some information. But as I said, this is the light version. You're going to get a very full version in September. So Casey and Scott, if you want to get us started.
Hey, everyone. I do just want to echo what Pete said when we rolled out iReady. So iReady was brand new for us in the middle of the year last year. And we rolled it out in February, which was in the middle of distance learning. So we're taking the results with a grain of salt for that reason, also because it's a brand new assessment. It's new for our kids, it's new for our teachers. So as Pete had said a few months ago, it's going to take us a few more months and a couple more administrations to really see trends in student growth and student achievement. Anything you want to add to that, Casey?
Well said.
Chris, you want to go to the next slide?
Sure.
So this is just an overview of the entire school. In February, we tested all students, as many as we could, in grades 1 through 7. And in May, we also added kindergarten. So we did kindergarten through 7th grade. And full distance learning in February. In May, we had about roughly 2/3 of our students who did test on campus. So we were able to monitor them as they took the test. And what we saw was that our students did better than expected. Being on distance learning for almost a year and a half, we were really worried there would be a lot of learning loss. And what you see here is the RTI pyramid on the left. We want a majority of our students to be in the bottom tier, that's tier 1, which means they're performing at or above grade level. The students in the middle in tier 2 mean they're about 1 grade level below expectations. And then in the red tier, which are our most serious needs for intervention, where we as administrators and teachers work together to see what we need to do to support them, we want that to be around 5 to 8%. So we did see, as compared to February, that our students did better on the May administration and that they had made growth in their learning, even though we were on distance learning for a year and a half. Anything to add here, Casey?
Just to give some comparison, what you see on your screen is the May results. And then in February, we had 8% at risk for tier 3, and we had 23% for risk at tier 2. And then tier 1 only had 69% of our students. So as Scott said, we're seeing the growth that we would want to see throughout the school year, even though not everyone tested on campus, and it was still a new test for them.
And I'll move on to the math.
Go back one, Chris, just for our new board members. These domains, the top 3 domains, phonological awareness, phonics, and high frequency word, are really those foundational domains that students are getting in kindergarten, 1st grade, and 2nd grade. So most of our students in grades 3 through 7 should have those skills mastered. The vocabulary, obviously comprehension of literature, and then comprehension of expository or informational text are higher order level thinking skills. So you will see those have a little bit more of a need. As our students get into the upper grades, these are skills and domains that they master. Catherine, I see that you have a question.
Yes, thank you, Scott. So I understand from what you just said that the second data point includes kindergarten students. The first data point does not include them. So just for the sake of being able to compare apples to apples and to register actual improvements or improvements, I think we should parse out the kindergarten students that were added to make sure that you do compare the same populations and their development between the first and the second data point.
Yes, I agree. And then once we have access to the online system again, which will be August 14th, we found out this morning, we'll be able to pull out by grade level, and we'll be able to analyze the comparison by grade level and by student groups within those grade levels to really hone in on their progress and their growth. So I completely agree.
Just switched it to math.
And as far as the math went, we saw very similar results. Remember, across the state, across the country, students struggle a little bit more with mathematical concepts. Casey, do you want to give the comparison numbers from February to May?
Yeah, so in February, we had, again, 8% of our students at risk for tier 3 compared to the 6% in May. Tier 2, we had 33% of our students in comparison to the 25% in May. And then tier 1, we only had 60% of students in comparison to that 68% in May.
And for the domains in math, they are adjusted by grade level. So there aren't any foundational skills per se. You see all of them differentiated by grade level as the students matriculate up through the grades. So we're using this as a starting point as we meet with teachers this week, and they look at the data that they're getting from last year. They're meeting in vertical teams with the teachers so that they can talk about the students. And then we're planning this year on administering the first diagnostic exam a couple weeks into school so that we're really launching into the year with some actionable data.
Scott, how is this worse? Well, I know it's better because it kind of goes right into it, but how is this worse than the old analytics that we use, the old test, Galileo? I guess what are iReady's deficiencies? Have you used it enough to discover any compared to Galileo?
Casey has a lot more experience with Galileo, and I have a lot more experience with iReady. So maybe we can bridge the.
Yeah, I'll share. I have not had any negative experience until this turnover period where we had an error with updating to this year, which is what has delayed us. But this again is the first time that they're rolling us over into a new school year. And we had a lot of bugs to work out right at the beginning, getting everything set up and making sure everything was input correctly. And so we expect the first time we go through anything with a new process for there to be some things to work out and to make sure that everything is going perfectly. But aside from this rollover delay, I have not had any negative experiences. With Galileo, I think the most challenging piece was that it would take several weeks, sometimes a month, to get the data back that was usable. With iReady, it doesn't matter if your whole class is done, it doesn't matter where kids are with the test, teachers can immediately start seeing the results in real time. And so it's great to be able to watch that and then know as soon as your class is done with the assessment, you have data that you can start working with that afternoon, and you don't have to wait for anything to be processed and analyzed by a team and then disaggregated and sent back to us. So I think that is a huge plus with this new program versus Galileo. One of the other challenges that I always had with Galileo was just it wasn't incredibly user-friendly, and this is very intuitive and very easy to understand and to navigate and to dive down more deeply into individual student needs, but also to look by strands and then to see, okay, as a whole, we know that it looks like we're pretty even across all of those different domains in math. But is that what it looks like by grade level? Is that what it looks like by class? Is that what it looks like by student group? And so it's much easier to work with the data in real time than Galileo. That was kind of the opposite of answering your question.
No, it's fine. It's sufficient. So very virtually no deficiencies, and you're happy. Like this brings you results. I know Chris, if you want to inform the board about just SAMs and how we're going to incorporate iReady into it, that would be great.
Sure. The Goethe exclusive student achievement measures are a piece that we've been toying with, and iReady is one part of that. There are other parts that are not quite as exclusive, and that's like CASP, which is the statewide system, but that's an important part that we need to keep an eye on, because that's exactly where, that's the very public notification. But we're also looking to what other things are available, what other data is available to us that's more specific to our school. So for instance, the A1, A2, and soon to be B1 tests, we have information on that, but we've never been really gathering it or using that information, making it actionable data. So that would be a part of what would fit in. We also want to break down some of our report card results, especially as they tie into IB, because we haven't really tracked how students are doing across the board with IB. So that's another area that we want to bring into the bigger picture. So iReady is a one piece of what will become a clearer picture and a consistent set of reports that the board's going to be looking at.
Thank you, Chris. Sam?
Thanks. I had a question about, you mentioned that there were some students that were not able to be tested or did not complete the iReady testing. Is that something that you expect to be different when everyone's on campus? Or are there other reasons that students did not take the test?
The main reason that students weren't able to take the test is because they weren't connected virtually. So once students are on campus in the classroom, it's something that the teachers will do in the classroom, and we're expecting all students to be able to take the test.
Sam, does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
And I do, the number 421 up here is our total enrollment. We didn't test TK. So we did have a great number of students we were able to test in May, whether they were at school or at home.
All right, Pete?
So you mentioned that there's lots of disaggregation and stuff that can be done, I assume, by you guys. What do the teachers get? Do the teachers get a dashboard with each student that they can, well, one for their class and then for each student to show them, the various domains here or stuff like that? Or
Pete, the teachers get an overwhelming amount of information. We've done a couple professional developments with iReady. We're also having an iReady expert come this week and help us look at how we can break down the data. But as far as the data goes, as administrators in the board, we see the bird's eye view and an overview of the school. Our teachers can then dive into these domains. They can dive for student groups for their whole class. They can dive into individual Common Core state standards for individual students and for their class. They can tap into different resources that they can use for small groups and targeted instruction. So we're just starting to get training in how to use this wealth of resources and data that's provided. So you can look at it from the micro to the macro levels, really.
does the because I know Smarter Balance is heading in this direction, but I can't give the exact example, but for this case, is it then possible? So you see Pete's overall performance, and you see Pete's performance by domain, and you'll see strengths and challenges. Does it then provide, or can it then provide sample problems that demonstrate where the challenges are? And so I guess that's one question. And is that possible?
Yeah, I think my favorite component of this program is that it's not just a testing program or a diagnostic program. There are two ways that we can really target gaps in learning for each student. One of them is from what the teachers see, and then how teachers are able to use the library of resources within iReady to then roll out small groups or targeted instruction in the classroom. But if you'll remember, each student has a login. and he or she is able to go into their individualized learning pathways in math and English language arts. And they get questions that are targeted at their specific gaps in learning. Our teachers can also go in and adjust those as needed. And then our teachers can also go in and assign lessons based on what they're teaching in class to either reinforce or introduce or extend learning.
And there's also an individual report that gets shared with families, but at the bottom of that report where it gives all of the data and the information, it'll give examples of that means that your child can do this. And the next step for their learning is to work on these specific skills and activities. And so it gives examples of problems there.
Examples of problems along with can-do statements. That,
yes, yeah.
And it places them, I assume it's kind of tiered. So, it says you're in the green tier. And so here's what you can do and so on.
Definitely. And when we were back in the spring for the last few weeks of school, you would go into a classroom, you'd see some students working on, questions that had one-word answers of vocabulary, matching vocabulary to pictures. In the same classroom, you could see a student reading a 3-paragraph essay and answering questions. So it really targets them where they are to bring them up to the next level.
So I think this stuff is all good, and I just want to reiterate my one concern, because I know iReady is more than just an assessment system, because you can go in and you can send the student off to go work on things where they have challenges. But I think I think that needs to be the second piece for maybe perhaps reinforcing what the teacher then teaches them before sending them off on their own, right? So again, it's just that it's a great tool, but it should be driven by the teacher primarily, and it should be used by the teacher to say, oh, look, there's these commonalities in terms of strengths and challenges in the classroom. I need to reteach this. I would rather see a teacher reteach something or focus on something for some proportion of the class, rather than sending all of those kids off to do it on their own, because that's going to be have some dubious results. So I know we talked about it before, but just want to reiterate that.
Yeah.
I'll just say, Pete, we hear that one loud and clear.
Thanks.
Trent?
No comments or questions. Thank you.
All right, Chris, if that is all for the ED report, let us move on to the review of your goals for this year and input. I would just like to tee this off by saying that last year, the board instituted a very aggressive initiative and compensation program for Dr. Jones. Chris and I worked, Chris sent me his goals a few days ago. And of course, there were 55 things that were on it, because he does want to do every single one of those things. So thank you, Chris, for streamlining the document a little bit, and I will let you take it from here.
Okay. Got to open the correct one. Okay. So it is definitely streamlined. So the areas we've kept similar to previous years, but I've tried to narrow it down to where I'm going to be placing my big focus. So some of this we kind of were just talking about when we mentioned student achievement and academic excellence. The actionable deliverable items are in yellow, but all of them are things we'll be looking at and trying to make happen. But kind of the key one for each one is listed in yellow. So presenting actionable data that is shows student performance, and not just in iReady, but that more broad picture of exclusive student achievement measures. That is tied to the recommendation from WASC when we had our review this last year, and we had a real positive, excellent review, but they were very clear about something they wanted us to be working on. And that was, they saw a lot of data, but they didn't see a lot of action on the data. And so that's our whole piece that we're looking at. And iReady is a huge part of that, but it's one slice of the pie that we'll be looking at. So what I'm looking for on this is that the board has a regular, consistent set of reports, and so that will be a major challenge of the year in this area, and in general, developing a culture all the way down to our teachers and parents and everyone that we're using data to make good choices for our kids. So that's the first one on there. The second is communication strategy and implementation. This is one where we did start something pretty major last year, which was Fresh Schools, but we didn't start it at the start of the year. So we rolled it out early in the year, but we'd already kind of missed the window of the startup of the year. And we used it for all kinds of things, but the key thing is internal messaging. It allows us as administrators to message to any particular family, or but more importantly, groups of families. We can do it by grade level. We could do it by class. We can connect with room parents all at once within this system. And it also allows us to do calendaring and fundraising, and we hope a student store. So we'd like to measure that we are pushing this rollout to the next level with a 20% increase in total messages. We had about 125,000 messages last year. So we want to see a 20% increase at least on that, and that'll indicate that teachers are using it, and that parents are using it for parent-to-parent connections, and so that's what we're looking for. We also are going to build out our social media presence, and the work being done on that will continue, and involving our social media coordinator, Nazmia Akbaba. We also are focusing on for marketing and outreach. On our online marketing, we're trying to increase greatly, and we want to be sure that it's paying off. And so we're going to measure that by what does our traffic website look like. So we'll use Google Analytics, which we have through our niche partnership. And we will be able to track that we're looking for a 20% increase in our website. We kind of use 20 as one of the main numbers here. We are also coordinating with our school principals, who for MYP and PYP, that we are increasing our tour attendance up 20%. It's a little tricky because last year it was all virtual, but we still did have good tour attendance, and we want to increase that by at least 20% this year. And brand ID, we are moving forward with at least 10. Actually, we were thinking it'd probably be more like 12 traditional advertisements in local media, which is, we used to do a handful, maybe 4 or 5. And so really increasing the number of local media with traditional advertising, and working to improve our diversity numbers, and that we're looking for at least a 3% increase in underrepresented student groups. And that would be the accumulation of our underrepresented student groups, and looking at that. Moving forward, this is probably the most important piece that we're looking at, is developing a long-term lease buy plan to secure GICS facilities with multiple options, meaning what could it look like? Could it be for part of the school? Could it be for all the school? No Prop 39, some Prop 39, all Prop 39, that those are issues. But I can assure you, my intention is with this to do to be looking through any type of facility purchase or lease, that we are doing it through a charter organization that does exactly that kind of work, and that we structure it through them to make sure that we do not have any issues with zoning, and we do not have any issues with all the politics that go into whatever direction we're going. So that's a big one. And to back that up, submitting at least 3 facilities funding grants or to through grants or foundations. Similarly, in school finance, I would also be putting together at least 5 public or private grants to advance the educational program. So 2 kinds of grants, one for facilities, one for our educational programs, but both bringing in money. So that's those 2 tied together a little bit. In order to keep my focus on that, I am making sure that we keep our eye on the big prize, and we've been working with the strategic planning task force, and we want to finalize that work this fall and bringing it for board ratification. So that's the deliverable. Also, want to be sure that delegation of duties is happening across our team, and make sure the board is aware of how we're dividing up a few things. Our director of operations, Biggie, is going to be in charge of internal fundraising. So that's not the fundraising you saw up here with grants and foundations, that's outside fundraising, but kind of the inside fundraising that we do. The traditional things that we've done with our gala and with our annual giving and our jogathon and Eat for Goethe and all those kind of things. Biggie is going to be the key person watching over that, as well as traditional media marketing and COVID-19 testing oversight, which is quite a monumental task. We may actually need to get some support, either temporary agency or part-time or something, to support our work on making sure that testing is functional. The next one is principals assigned to ownership of our the website management and keeping that up to date and current, and inviting outreach, which I certainly am going to be a part of as well, but going to out to different areas. And we're hoping that a lot of those activities will happen this year that didn't happen last year. That was really, we felt hurtful to us in the recruiting efforts from last year. So, and enrollment, but of course, all of that is accountable to me and the Board of Trustees. Finally, we're the board itself looking to recruit at least 1 new board member, potentially 2, to bring our numbers up from 5 to potentially 7. So those are the main things that I'm looking at, and open for questions from the board. This isn't for approval today. This is for us to think about and share some thoughts back and forth, and then we'll approve it in September.
Please. And if we I think Chris is looking for input, clarification, and comments. Start with Sam.
Thanks. The one area I'd like some clarification on is on the communication strategy and the deliverable about the increase of messages. Is it just about pushing messages out to parents? Is it parents understanding the types of messaging platforms and communication tools available? Because an increase in messages from the parent side doesn't necessarily sound like the thing I want to have happen. But maybe I'm not understanding the deliverable there.
So what I'm hoping for in this is that we use Fresh Schools in a more robust way, And a key piece of that is that teachers, for instance, last year had already set up their email groups, which is a big difficulty for them, and they have to keep updating it throughout the year. And so teachers were not using Fresh Schools in the way that it's designed because they'd already set it up, and then they would have been transferring to a new system. So this year we're allowing them to begin with that, which we think will generate a lot more consistency of use when it's pushing out from the teacher level. And then I think the ancillary good of that is that parents might be able to connect with each other more easily, and especially, you know, as we have some limitations on what we can do on campus, it gives a vehicle for people to connect with people they might just have bumped into, you know, at drop off or pickup in days where we were able to be on campus for that. And so I think it does give us an opportunity for a more robust rollout, and just the number of messages I think will be an indicator of, are we doing that? I'm hoping it's even beyond that 20%.
Thank you.
Pete?
Oh yeah, I am already unmuted. I think this is all great. I guess to one thing, which is, I know a little bit in the weeds, but I figure this is as good a place as I need to mention it. Maybe it's listed there and not highlighted. I think one thing that's critical and needs to be done right away, unless it's already been done, was our I can't even think of the name of it now, but the method that parents used to enroll their kids with, which was a PDF that you had to download and fill out, and it wasn't online or anything. Does that ring a bell?
Intent to enroll?
Yeah, not the intent to enroll. I thought the whole process.
The
was,
enrollment process, bringing it
yeah.
more online.
Yeah,
that was brought up last year. That is something
Right.
we could definitely make a part of the outreach.
yeah. I think that needs to, you know, because that's one of those things that's easy to kick down the road because it's kind of like, oh well, you know, we can just do it. But before too long, we're going to be at a point again where it's going to be too late, and I think we want to be geared up to have that done in a timely manner. So I think that should have a little bit of a priority.
Thank you.
Katrin?
That's it.
Yes. Sam, you took the words out of my mouth. I also kind of stumbled over the 20% increase in total messages. I would like to add a couple of thoughts to that. If you want to measure the utilization of the new tool, I understand that that makes sense. A different angle would be just to clarify that that is a performance expectation with teachers in how they manage communication with the students and parents in their class. And if you want to look at how effectively you communicate with families, how messages that you send out are being received, I'm wondering if there's a different way, such as click rates, you know, click open rates of messages that you send out, to look on the other end how communication is being received and processed. Lastly, throughout the past year, you sent out several surveys asking parents, amongst other things, about communication frequency and content. And maybe that feedback could be leveraged, perhaps you've done that already, to again determine how well the communication strategy is working and adjust accordingly.
Thank you.
Additionally, a couple of other thoughts. So I take it that right now, these are the thoughts you gathered, Chris, as to what your priorities should be over the next year. Are you going to then take the modified content and then transition that into more of a goal format with timeline, milestones, et cetera, that enables us to better, you know, together have conversations around progress?
So I could put it into that kind of format. Once this is agreed upon, I could turn it around into a more of a chart format with a follow-up timeline and a follow-up.
I usually just like timelines to make sure that we're on track.
So Katrin, just gonna jump in. So when I first became president, one of the things we realized was that I guess the previous executive directors actually had no objectives, clearly defined objectives for the organization annually. And so we began by contractually requiring that we perform two reviews for the executive director once. What is it, Chris? I mean, I think we aim for like February.
Yeah,
and then-
January, February.
Yeah, and then another one in June. And what in those review, and you know what, Katrin, actually it would be great to have your pair of eyes look at it. In those documents, what we outline is sort of a pulse on where Chris is as far as achieving some of these objectives. Historically, what I've noticed is that I would say, what do you think, Chris? A majority of these things get done by June. However, when January and February is our time to, is in that review cycle is when we anticipate, or you prepare us in case, something is falling off the rails. And I've totally managed people on, setting the goals and setting a deadline on when to accomplish them. But since we perform the review twice a year, that's really when we kind of look at it. Does that make sense, Katrin? And Chris, you can, it's another thing to kind of say, like, this is when I expect it. But I think in that document, it's also clear in January that, it's either already done or it's at risk of not being completed for the rest of the year.
If that works for everybody, I'm going to go with it. I personally find it a lot easier having certain timelines so that we have a better discussion as to where there may be roadblocks, to be able to have discussions around causes for roadblocks and help to, discuss how to best go about it.
So what I've noticed in Chris and his goals is that usually they surface, like it's not such a formal thing. Like usually they will always surface into the ED report. You know what I mean? And when they do surface there, then we're pretty well informed, and there are no surprises in January or February. But I think the main focus originally was that we don't set out time in our regular meetings to measure this. We do it twice a year, but he presents us with updates on each of these things, usually in every regular meeting or special meeting, regular meeting with the ED report.
Okay.
Chris, do you have any thoughts? Does anyone else have any thoughts?
Yeah, and I don't mind breaking it down with some timelines as well. I mean, if that's helpful to you, that we could figure out how to do that as well.
I think, Chris, if it's not too much work, break it into quarters. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I would probably, just like the fresh schools thing, 20% increase. I think, Kristen, we talk about utilization. I think that's a great way to track fresh schools. But obviously that would be end of year. Some of this stuff will be end of year, I would imagine. But yeah, if it's not too much trouble, I think that's what you're hearing.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions, comments, or clarifications from the board? Don't see any. Sam, nothing further? You're on the phone. I can't see your head shaking.
Yeah, nothing further. Thanks.
Okay. All right. Then moving on to the board goals and activities calendar. So this is something that the board's instituted for the last 3 years. The goal of this document is to make sure all board members are aware of our predefined agenda for the year. when things come on, come off. This document is updated usually every month, and it's available on the website. Chris and I start out every year by, kind of taking what we've done in the prior years, things that were missed or we couldn't get to, and move it into this document. We also include, regular board business and items. There are a few new items here. Actually, Chris, is there anything new on there? I don't think there's anything new on there. I mean, facilities was on there last year. We just didn't get a chance to even talk about it because of COVID. But we use this document to generate a calendar, and it'll have the regular meeting in September and October and November, and these items will be interspersed throughout those months, and so every board member will have a good idea on when we are going to discuss those topics, or when those topics will come up for ratification. It's a living document. So if you guys have suggestions, or if you guys have discussions that you would like to add on, feel free to let Chris know, and he will slot it in, into the next board meeting, or following, depending on our schedule. The idea behind this was just to make sure that all meetings start at a reasonable time, end at a reasonable time, and we plan out other extra meetings that may need to be done, or meetings that may not need to happen. With that, I will open it up to any questions, comments, or clarifications. Sam?
Thank you. I'm sorry I'm not online to see it. I took a look at it, and I had one question specifically about an item on there, and then a couple of other kind of more meta questions about it. First of all, I saw a line that said establishment of the Board of Regents, and I was not clear what that meant. Are we trying to establish another body, or how does that fit in? And then second, I think it. Oh, go on, and then I'll continue with my other question. So I think it'd be helpful to have listed on there, on that task list, the things that we understand are annual repeatable events, and then things that are kind of the special things. So we understand where it's going to hit into a calendar, because I appreciate the fact that you described that it goes into a calendar and it winds up on a work plan. And I'm sorry for all the background noise. But I think, the document could be more useful if it also identifies on it the things that we understand are the repeatable items, or some indication of where it might fall into a work plan, and not just scheduled into different meetings, to give a little bit more understanding of this isn't just a list of things that are out there, but there are a list of things that are prioritized for action.
Got it. All right. Yeah, absolutely. We can do that. As far as your first question about the Board of Regents, so in conversation with previous boards, and in an effort to become a better governing body, Goethe's board is there's basically several kinds of boards, but Goethe's board is the Board of Trustees. Everyone here today is an operational, long-term strategic board that is running the organization. In the past, there have been lots of conversations about pivoting the board towards more of a fundraising board, typically what nonprofits are, where the members are actively out there funding and raising funds and developing for the organization. In previous conversations with board members, there was a concerted effort to have a body of people be created that are that have definitive interest in promoting the mission of the organization, that are not limited by compliance requirements from the Department of Education, that are not limited by whether their children attend the school or not attend the school. Specifically, I think we've got a great group of parents that support the organization and that are very well networked throughout Southern California. However, those parents can support the school in this way rather than operationally managing the organization from a long-term strategic standpoint, which calls into question sort of the organizational bylaws and local authorizer requirements from parents managing a public school. So that's sort of the history behind that. And it's just something that has been, Chris, how long has it been on the list? Like 2 years, I think now? 2.5. It was on last year.
Yeah.
It was on, yes, we talked about it the year before that, and we put it on last year, and no traction could have been made. Does that answer your question? Do you have, and it doesn't have to be if it's the will of this board that's not necessary, or we need to have a conversation about it. I think part of the reason that's there is we moved it into it, and we can absolutely have a conversation about it to see if there's merit in it still.
Thanks. That's helpful background. I think it also raises another question of if there are items that are sitting there that haven't been acted on for a year or 2 years, setting aside the COVID issues, right? We understand that there are some things that were just iced because of that, but maybe there's an opportunity for a prioritization exercise and to see if some of the items that are on there are still necessary to remain, or if there's other objectives that the board would like to bring in as a unique priority.
The list should be organized in priority order, and we take it and we span it out through months. My recommendation would be, and we can continue do another round about this, but maybe Chris, we have that conversation, that number 6 conversation during a retreat. I think that would actually probably, because then we'll talk about facilities funding. My takeaway from what Sam just said is also maybe have another column there that says recurring, or postponed from prior years or something like that. So it's clear, and if there's any direct questions, they can go to you, Chris, or me. Sam, does that help?
That's great. Thank you.
Okay. Pete?
Yeah, I guess my one question is, what meeting did we ever not have?
What
You
meeting?
said this provides us, tells us when we calendar this, then potentially we won't have a meeting. I'm just trying to know when that was.
There was one last year. There was, right, Chris? That LCAP meeting that you said we needed to have.
Oh, you mean the extra meeting that then didn't happen? I don't
Yeah,
think that
exactly. We
necessarily
add
counts.
one and take it away.
Uh-huh.
That's right.
All righty. That was it.
Thanks, Pete. Katrin?
No additional questions or comments. Maybe one, if we were to then sort of dive in and work on one of those items, if I had, specific ideas, just reading over it, what would be the best way to do that?
The protocol is really, it's usually Chris and I, you know what I mean? If you want to send us an email, and then we can kind of give you the background behind it and the context. One of the things I did want to do during the retreat is actually go through this document also and kind of set up sort of the historical drive that brings us this list. And I think Sam's point about what's recurring and what's historical, and you know what I mean, and give some more context onto why this list is the way it is, what it's going to look like 5 years from now, and what it's going to look like 10 years from now. But I think ultimately, from a process and protocol standpoint, if you have questions, just shoot Chris and I a note. And yeah, we'd love to tell you like this is what happened last year, or 2 years ago, or 8 years ago. That's why it's on there, or this is something that's just something we do.
Sounds good.
Okay. If there are no further questions, I think Pete just stepped away and I think he was good. Yeah, let's move on. I'd like to move on to the approval of the student study team. I'd like to make a motion. Is there a second?
Second, this is Sam.
Second from Sam. Go ahead, Chris.
Okay, there are a few items in here that are more policy driven. I apologize for the length of some of those items and the amount of reading involved. This one was a short one, so I'll show that guy. So it was recommended from our legal YMC that we take a look at or do define our student study team policy, and clarifying that that is a part of general education and not special education. But the reason it's listed as its own policy is to make sure that that's all been clear. And so we gave them a request to give us define how we set this up, and we worked with them on making sure that this matches what we do. Followed up with Mr. Michelson, who's been really central to our SST process. I do want to mention there's one, we call it a SST as a student success team. And we've occasionally slipped back to the old vernacular of student study team. I think on the agenda it says that, but just so you know, the terminology we're using is student success team. And this is basically a team that gets together whenever a student's having any kind of issue. It could be academic, could be social emotional, could be whatever it may be, and bringing the adults that care about that child together and seeing if they can come up with some creative solutions. It is not a guideway to special education. In fact, it's designed to see what can we do far before, and see if there's some things that can be done to support that particular student. So any questions on this policy?
Sam,
None for me.
Pete?
Nope.
Katrin?
I very much support the idea of the student success team. One question or suggestion rather, would it perhaps make sense to have one standing member of the SST that accompanies all of these cases? From my experience, I think just having this experience walking the teams through the process, and perhaps also having oversight of all the cases that are currently being worked on at Goethe would probably help.
I will. I'll dive in on that one and can assure you that does happen. The person who does coordinate that is Mr. Michelson.
Great.
So and he's present at all of those meetings. So that definitely occurs, and it's a regular part of this.
Any other comments? All right, then all in favor to approve the student success team policy? Sam?
Yes.
Pete?
Yes.
Katrin?
Yes.
That is a yes for me. Moving on to the approval of the independent study policy, I'd like to make a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Go ahead, Chris.
Okay, this is the second policy that we've had before, but it's been renewed here based on a law that was passed
Did we lose Chris?
I thought it was just me.
I thought it was me.
Yeah, I did.
I just was texting the rest of the team to see if it was me. I'll text him and let him know.
No, so yeah, so that's a
Probably-
good picture though.
He's probably talking away.
Yeah, we just lost him. He just dropped.
Okay, can you hear me now? Sorry about that.
That's okay. Go ahead.
For some reason, I jumped to the other Wi-Fi. Oh well. So I need to share screen again. So the policy is for independent study. We've used it for years, but it's changed dramatically, and they changed it in ways that they basically broke it down between short-term independent study, which has some changes, but it's basically run the way we had done independent study before, and longer-term independent study, which would be beyond 15 days. And that has a whole host of things that actually look a lot more like distance learning. And so it was really written at the state level to kind of make sure that people were wanting to come back to school and not making independent study too easy to do. And so the policy that is listed here that was in the Dropbox for you guys is straight from the law that was passed, AB 130, and it has got things in it for beyond 15 days that are involve things like synchronous learning. So similar to what we had with distance learning, also for daily check-ins, and it depends on the grade levels. And what would be required as a next step after passing this is we would need to revamp with legal our master agreements with families. And so even to go forward from day one next week with any kind of independent study, we will have to get that revamped. They have given us 30 days to get this implemented. However, across the state of California, not just charter schools, but all schools are involved in this. And there is much outcry about what the changes that have been put on this. I don't know whether we'll see new changes that occur when the legislature gets back together in a couple weeks. But it is possible that we see some even more changes to this. But for us to be able to do any kind of independent study, this is the law that we have to follow. And you can see like here where it says the tiered engagement strategies do not apply to pupils who participate in independent study for fewer than 15 days. So that's what is more of our traditional, the way we've done it in the past. But we also have all the rules for doing it long term. At this point, we have put our time and resources into getting our school up and running for everyone. And that is, I think, was the message and mandate from our families at the end of last year, was they wanted to get back on campus full time. So that's where we've been putting our energies. The Delta variant has thrown a new twist and wrinkle into this, and we saw that at the top of the meeting when we talked about enrollment, and that just in the past week we've dealt with enrollment dropping that we had not anticipated. This gives us a step towards trying to rectify that, but this is not something that can be done lightly or easily. It will involve teachers, it will involve our administrative staff, it'll involve our attendance officer, and it is likely to require, to do long term, it is likely to require an additional teacher at least to make this functional. We're also looking, is there a way to outsource this? But we're getting very mixed messages of whether that's legal and follows this law or not. So there's much more to be done with regard to independent study, but passing this gives us a start towards moving towards that. So I'm not sure if that was as clear as it might have been, and I hope dropping out, you didn't lose me too much, but I'm open to any questions, but I encourage the board to approve this so we can take next steps with regard to independent study.
So Chris, just for clarification's sake, this is state law. We have virtually no control over it. However, the repercussions are, if we pursue independent study, we have to follow this policy. That will require additional expenses on our part, more risk, more resources. Is the gist of it?
If we go to the long term, over 15 days, because in the past we didn't usually give, we had a caveat that allowed it, but it didn't rarely happen to go beyond 14 days was our limit. So
okay, thank you, Chris. Sam.
Thanks. So have you had any parents approach you to see if there would be a possibility for long-term independent study or some ability to have school without being on campus, that there might be an immediate need to turn into those longer-term contracts?
So we have had a few that have, and if you'd asked me last week, I said that I would have said that number would have been 2 to 3 that had asked about that. The number is probably now 8 to 10 that have asked about it, and some that might, a couple have said that's problematic for us with regard to maintaining at school. So that's where we stand in terms of numbers, but we're trying to think of that could be more.
And a further follow-up question, would there be a threshold, and I know that we have the COVID safety plan discussion coming up later, is there a threshold that of numbers asking for independent study that would flip into a hybrid call, or are the two disconnected?
They're kind of disconnected because right now there is no methodology to run a hybrid program from the state. There was last year because of AB 98, which was last year's rules, but this year's rules do not allow for that unless they change them, which they could. So I think we want to keep our options open and look at what's out there. I think we're at the point where school's going to start in a week. We're going to have to see what our numbers look like, where things are at, and we'll keep track of any families who are having struggles. We're going to encourage everybody. Let's get started. Let's see how it goes. We could even place people on an independent study for the very beginning of school under this new policy, and try to see what we can get accomplished. So I think this is our first step.
Thank you.
Pete?
Yeah, I think that Sam's question was very good in terms of what's the demand, because obviously I don't know what the current funding per pupil is exactly, but I guess it's roughly around 10K. So then the question becomes, if you have 10 kids that are going to opt out, is it worth it to spend $100,000 to get to make sure that we can do some sort of program? So I think the two things then are one, I think your idea of starting them off on the first 14 days, is there a specific number of days you have to be in school between the 14-day increments?
I'm sorry, I'm not quite clear on that, Pete.
Well, so you can do 14 days of independent study, right?
Yes, you could do 14. You could do initially 14 school days. Yes.
Right. Well, so if a student comes back to school for a day, does that reset the clock?
Oh, I see what you mean. In terms of no, it's cumulative.
Okay, so that's very different than chunks of 14 days. So, and I guess the other thing is, I would assume that all of the ESSER funds and all of that stuff would pay for this other programs if we needed to launch that.
That would be a possibility. We've targeted those out through 2024. So they all have a spot, but we could look at, in the out years, what are we shifting or what are we changing? So I think, yes, that is a possibility in terms of looking at some down the road funding. It'll affect us in the out years.
Absolutely, but if we lose another 10% of students, that's going to affect us next year right away, or even this year. So I think sometimes you have to take the lesser of two evils, and this may be something that's going to be required just to make it to next year.
Mhm. And quite frankly, it is required of charters and of school districts and county offices. It is not required of charters.
Right.
So it's optional for us, and we're now just seeing that there may be more interest in it of the long-term idea than there was even 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago.
Right, and with and it could very well be that California will skate by, and in maybe 2 weeks things will have stabilized. But I don't think I'd count on that. So I think we need to look very strongly in being prepared to offer something, because again, we don't have a lot of room to be losing parents to other options.
Yeah. Thank you.
Well said. Thank you, Pete. Katrin?
Strongly agree with you, Pete. We're still living in highly unusual times where everybody is asking for more rather than less flexibility in how we can all, live our lives with our family in the safest way possible, etc. It's unfortunate that we need to restrict flexibility in order to be in legal compliance, but of course, being in compliance is the number one priority. And if the alternative is to not offer independent study at all, then I'm in favor of going with the policy, while maybe in the meantime, our leadership could think about creative ways how to provide flexibility to students that is within the limits of legal compliance.
Thank you.
Okay, move on to the vote. All in favor of approving the independent study policy? Sam?
Yes.
Pete?
Yes.
Katrin?
Yes.
That is a yes for me as well. Moving on, I'd like to make a motion to approve the family handbook for the academic year. Do I have a second?
Second from Sam.
Right, go ahead, Chris.
Okay, this one was the monster of a document. It is quite lengthy. The main part is about the same size as it was last year, but we did insert with recommendation from legal. They've reviewed our entire handbook and made recommendations of things that bring it up to date, and particularly some annual notifications and some specific language that we had that was out of date, and that they put in there. We also added, which is the appendix of the different policies that are Title IX, which we approved earlier in the year. We have our suspension and expulsion policy, which is ironic because we've never suspended and we have never expelled a student in all of our years, but we do have to have the policy within there. Suicide prevention policy is something we approved not last year, it was the year before, I think in January 2020. And they made a few updates onto that. And then professional boundaries for staff and students and interaction. That's an important one that we have out there from an HR point of view. And then the uniform complaint policy, which we had our previous policy was done by a different law firm, Procopio. So the YMC suggested we use their updated language. So they said replace it all, and so we've switched that in as the policy. So I was thankful. We did make a change in the calendar of events. We had changed the let me see where it is, changed the calendar, but we didn't change the paragraph that was behind it or on top of it. So let me see, it's right here. So this now does reflect the updated dates in the paragraph here that is reflected in the dates that were down here. So I know this is just an enormous amount of information that's there. We do need to push this out to families, and it has been, as I said, fully reviewed by legal, and that we're recommending for approval. So with that, yes, here. You see her?
Sorry, I was muted. How many pages is that document?
Many. 61, I think, is the main document. And with the appendix, it was like 115.
All right, thank you. Okay, all in favor to approve the family handbook?
Any comments or questions?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, Sam.
No questions, thanks.
Pete,
Nothing for me.
Katrin.
No questions either.
Sorry about that, guys. All in favor to approve? Sam?
Can I ask a question quickly?
Sure.
Chris, you said that there are new policies in there. Would that mean that we have to exchange all the policies that we have on the website with all the wording that is in this family handbook now as a
Yes,
consequence?
we'll do that as a follow-up.
So the board would approve all these policies pretty much with the date today and make them those that are in the appendix of this document now?
Correct, and that was the direction of the board last, I think it was January or so, when we talked about it and said to put it into the handbook.
I just want to make sure that it's reflected in the minutes.
Sure.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, on to the vote. Sam?
Yes.
Pete?
Yes.
Katrin?
Yes.
And yes for me. And moving on to the approval of application to operate a school-wide program for the purposes of Title I, Part A funding. I'd like to make a motion. Is there a second?
I second.
And that was from Katrin. Go ahead, Chris.
Okay, we're now on to the next two items that are about federal programs. As you guys are aware, we entered into the world of federal programs in this past school year. We had never been a Title I qualifying school, and we were able to qualify. And so we jumped on that because of not just the ongoing Title I money, but that would also allow us to collect Title II money, which is for professional development. It would also allow us to collect some Title IV money that can be used to support the Title I ongoing. So more than that, the federal programs ESSER II and ESSER III were dependent on being a Title I school, which were hundreds of thousands of dollars. So, and those are one-time in nature. So all of that together led us to going to become a Title I school. There are two types of Title I programs. There is a school-wide program as one option, or a I'm blanking on the name, for individualized
I
students.
think it's targeted assistance.
Targeted, thank you. I knew somebody to help me out with that. Targeted assistance, and we've been on targeted assistance before when we started out, we are talking about moving, we're requesting that the board designate a move to school-wide. And the reason for this is if the board so designates, we can now serve all of our students across the board with the services, and we don't need to make delineations about who receives it and who can receive it and who can't receive it. And so we feel like with all the individualization that we're doing through things like iReady, it's a perfect way to make sure that no student is left behind, no student is left out, and it will allow us to more equally distribute resources to our students in a much more flexible way. So we are recommending, with all this legalese here, that we are moving from a targeted assistance program to a school-wide program. And the board has the authority to do that by saying, yes, we think that's a good idea. Yes, sir.
Sam, questions, comments, concerns?
None for me. Thank you.
Pete?
Do we still keep track then, though, of individual status?
Yes.
Okay. That's it. Thanks.
Trin?
No questions.
All right, on to the vote. All in favor? Sam?
Aye.
Pete?
Yep.
Katrin?
Yes.
And it's yes for me. Moving on to the approval of the LCAP federal addendum. I'd like to make a motion. Is there a second?
This is Sam, I second.
That is Sam. Go ahead, Chris.
So this is a related item. Every year we do an LCAP. It's an all-year process. And now we also do a federal addendum to the LCAP because we have federal programs. This addendum shows that, or recognizes that we are a school-wide, now we are a school-wide program because you just proclaimed it as such. And so this piece connects that. It says exactly what we're spending our funding on with Title I, which is we're using it for an ELD instructional assistant. We are using it for SEL surveys, and we are using it for our Title II we're using for teacher induction. We are all the pieces that are in here are listed of any federal program. So even ones that we're not doing, like Title III, are listed here in the directions, but all the information was there for your perusal. And we are recommending the approval of the federal addendum template for all of our federal programs. Yes, sir.
Sam?
No questions.
Pete?
No questions.
Katrin?
No questions.
None for me either. Moving on to the vote. All in favor? Sam?
Yes.
Pete?
Yes.
Trin?
Aye.
That's an aye for me as well. Approval of the updated school safety and reopening plan. I'd like to make a motion. Is there a second?
I can second.
All right, that was Katrin. Go ahead, Chris.
Okay. Well, the plan is trying to come up. Hold on a second. Oh, there we go. Okay. So last February, we approved a COVID-19 prevention plan. And one of the requirements of that plan is we relook at it every 6 months. And it's actually, that's a great thing because the start of the year. It's a good time to be looking at this. And some things have changed. A big part of what's changed on this is that when we set this up back in February, there was a social distancing requirement of 6 feet. That shifted to a recommendation of 3 feet where it's doable, basically. And that's the direction we've received from state of California, county Department of Public Health, is that social distancing is not a reason to not bring kids back. So this document reflects that change, that we are trying for 3-foot distancing when it is feasible, but we are definitely keeping all classrooms and all students being able to come to school. We are continuing with things like masking, as that is a requirement of LAUSD for LAUSD campuses. We are continuing with everything we had with regard to testing, and that our cadence has been determined at weekly for now. And so that's where what we're doing is weekly for all staff and all students. This also gives all the details of what to do in case of an outbreak, a positive case on campus, or a positive case tested but hasn't come to campus, or was previously at campus. All the different scenarios that could happen, and specifically, these are things that we kind of work through these hypotheticals all the time, and they're constantly changing and constantly swirling. But this document gives us a kind of grounding for that. I think the big question that people have is what would happen if there were a positive case. Now that we're not in a hybrid situation where there's a particular half cohorts of a classroom, a whole classroom is essentially our cohort. What we would be doing, because that would be the group that would be most at risk if there were someone who had tested positive. Our plan is to have those students to go on to doing distance learning for the time of their quarantine, and we would run that through independent study, which I'm glad we now have an independent study policy to do that, and run it for the 10 days. So we could do that actually within our regular traditional independent study process. But that would be how we would shift if we had a positive case, that an entire class, or it might be a pair of classes, that would need to go and do a 10-day quarantine at home. So that's how we're looking to set these things up. And this document is the update of what we had posted and lived by last year. And like I said, it's not dramatically different. Most of the protocols are the same. The biggest change being the 6-foot distancing rule, which is now a 3-foot recommendation. So I'll leave it at that. I'm sure you have questions, and we are happy to hear
them. Sam?
Sure. So you just mentioned that if there's a positive in the class, then you move the class into independent study. And so if that's for 10 days, let's say there are, 2 positive cases across the classroom in the first, 3 months of school, then you're already tripping over. If it's a cumulative limit that we talked about under the independent study, we're already implementing those longer term contracts, right? So it seems like it's something that we have to address more quickly than not.
Yes,
even if people aren't requesting independent study.
Yes and no. Yes, we would be crossing over that. If it happened more than once, it would be crossing over that limit. But actually doing a distance learning setup for a whole class, which we think we very functionally could do, because we know how to do it from previous year, that could switch very quickly and easily and then switch back when it comes. That would meet the requirements in that independent study long-term, because we would be doing synchronous daily. We would be doing daily check-ins. So all the things that are a part of that are difficult to do without additional people could actually be done in a quarantine situation with the entire class. The difference would be when it's an individual student, then we have to figure out how you piece that together. Does that make sense?
Yes, that makes sense. But it seems like if that student who's in that classroom, so I get that the classroom setup itself and the way that you've already understood how to do distance learning through Goethe, that would meet that requirement. But then if there are any additional days that a student themselves would be requesting independent study, what would then happen because they've already tripped their cumulative limit? Do they have a different set of requirements they then have to meet if they only, if they request, 4 days of independent study later on?
Yeah, I think that's a good point, and it would be an issue. And we could, there could be things at some point where if we don't have a way of rectifying it, there's some ADA we might have to walk away from, but we hope that wouldn't be the case, that we can figure out a way to make this work. So we're going to have to put all of our brain power on this and figure out the whole independent study puzzle.
Thanks. Nothing else for me.
Pete,
I'm good, thank you.
Katrin,
Chris, just to make sure I understood your answer to Sam's question correctly, if indeed there was an exposure in one of your classrooms, you would then, so to speak, quarantine the entire class and they would receive virtual instruction for that period of quarantine. Is that correct?
That's how we're looking at it.
Okay.
That we think it's the safest way, and we think we could do that pivot and still really teach and not slow down, because I think if you're doing it with the whole class, that's very functional with the teacher, and we know how to do that. So we think that learning would continue and be successful, and then we'd be able to bring back at the end of that time. And realistically, it's probably not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And so we need to be ready.
Yes, thank you.
Can I just jump in back to Sam's point about, which we didn't really resolve in terms of meeting the threshold of independent study. And I know it's splitting hairs, but that is the life of these things, is that technically that's not independent study, right? Because if you're quarantining a whole class, that's virtual instruction, that's not independent. So, perhaps vocabulary is the way around it. But our legal people can weigh in on that. But it's not independent, right? It's a class. It's quarantine instruction. So you give it a different name, and you don't have that problem.
Yeah, we'll parse through the legal, and believe me, this law was passed less than a month ago, and everyone is expected to know. They haven't even decided what they don't know yet about what they don't know. So it's a pretty crazy time with regard to all of this right now, and it's across the state. It's everybody. It's not just a charter issue. So yeah, point taken.
any other questions or comments? Sam, you good?
Yes, thanks.
Okay. Then to the vote. All in favor of the updated school safety and reopening plan? Sam?
Yeah.
Pete?
Yes.
Katrin?
Aye.
That is a yes for me. I'd like to make a motion to approve the revised board orientation guide. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
So this document created first year of presidency 2 years ago for onboarding of board members. We visited the first board meeting of the year every year. This year, Chris has added several sections, very important ones regarding financials for the school and interpretation of the financials. I think Katrin and Sam, you guys have definitely looked at it. Chris, anything else that's new in the document from prior years?
No, that's the focus area. Oh, I had it up there. I went away. Hold on a sec. It's coming. It's still coming. There we go. Okay, so I added in language about how we're funded and use some of the alphabet soup of LCAP and LCFF and ADA and all that kind of stuff, making sure that it's spelled out there. Talked about our budget in general, and talked about how budget is ongoing. We're looking at the current year usually, but we keep in mind prior years and we look ahead to future budget years, and that how we kind of go through the year of unaudited actuals and then turning into the first interim report, second interim report, and the end of the year actuals that then get unaudited actuals that get audited, and how that all works out. And then some just information about the dashboard that XED provides, and a sample of what it looks like and how to track it. So we had a chance to kind of go over this with our newest board members when we did an orientation. So thank you each for spending a good chunk of time with me as we went through this and other items. But I think this is a really good document that you see. I know you spent a lot of time in getting this together initially, and it's a great way to launch and help a new member on board.
Thank you, Chris. On that note, Sam and Katrin, do you have any comments, additions that we can make to the document? Your interpretation? I know Pete's seen it for a few years, so I'll let him speak after.
Thanks, Chair. This is Sam. I actually didn't read it with the thought of addition, so I'm prepared to approve it tonight, but I would step back and also think about if I had recommendations for future additions.
Katrin?
Same here, exactly.
We'll give you guys a year, and then you can say the 75 pages that should have been included in it.
Perfect.
On that note, I'll switch to Pete. Any comments, Pete?
That's right. There's a end of year quiz, isn't there? which I've resoundingly failed every year. No comments from me.
All right. All in favor of approving the revised guide? Sam?
Yeah.
Pete?
Yes.
Katrin?
Yes.
All right. Next is the appointment of the Board of Trustees Secretary. Well, who wants it? Pete, you throwing your hat in the ring?
No.
Katrin or Sam, any thoughts? I know you guys are pretty new. Sam, you want to start?
Sure. So what is the typical expectation of the secretary at this board level?
So according to the bylaws, the actual responsibility is to know exactly where the meeting notes are kept, and to step in for the president in case he becomes incapacitated, and chair the meetings chair the board meetings according to the bylaws.
Because it seems that the minutes themselves are prepared by Chris's team, and then does the secretary have a role in affirming the minutes before they're presented to the board for approval, or does the secretary interact with the minutes at all?
The secretary does not, but a very dynamic secretary could propose policy that, ratifies to some extent, before it comes to board for approval. The bylaws are pretty open about that. Chris and I have spoken in the past that it's important that the secretary be ready to, okay, I use this term, and I know Pete's gonna cringe every time I say it because I'm already introducing it. If I get hit by a bus.
I knew it.
Look, I'm all about continuity, okay? So that there's someone there, and if I got hit by a bus during this meeting, then the secretary's there to kind of, but I also vision this role as someone who is, who's aware of the day-to-day operational things. Chris and I Chris, what do you think? Like at least maybe twice a week, maybe 3 times a week, we talk, definitely once a month in preparation for the board meetings. We have executive council meetings with the GPA, which, we've spoken about the treasurer, the secretary also joining, so that they are, it's like, it's part of the board administration, basically. Much more, I would say, dynamic than the bylaws stipulate. But, I think it's an important position, and it's also, you guys are new. I don't want to put you on the spot. If you want to wait a little bit, we can also like table it. And we can have this conversation in next month or Katrina's shaking. Katrina's saying yes. Yes, Katrina, you wanna...
Yeah, so Sam, I don't know how you feel about it, but I think it's a reasonable idea, Yasir, to table it just for a little while so that both Sam and I could probably get a better sense of the time commitment, just by fulfilling our regular board duties. And I, for my part, right now don't feel comfortable, committing to an additional sort of set of responsibilities as secretary. And maybe it looks different a month from now, but for now, I would propose if we could maybe revisit the topic in a few weeks.
Any objection?
I'd support tabling it to the next meeting. Thanks.
All right, 8, the same. All right. We are tabling that motion, and all in favor, Sam?
Yes.
Pete?
Yes.
Katrin?
Yes.
It's a yes for me. Meeting calendar. I'd like to make a motion.
Who moved that motion? There was no move or second in the beginning.
Oh, Biggie, you're so good. Thank you. I will move. And is there a second?
I'll second. This is Sam.
All right. And I think is that if we use the same votes, sound good?
Yeah.
All right. Thank you. Make a motion to confirm the meeting calendar. Just a clarification before we get into a second, Chris and Katrin and Sam, no changes, just affirming it, or are there changes?
I can say we just need to work out a way at the annual meeting for Sam, who looks like she'd be out of town that far ahead. My calendar, I don't know how you have a calendar that far out ahead, but that's pretty impressive. That we could do some kind of remote, and while we don't know exactly what the rules will be about remote meetings at that point, I'm sure we can do it because we've done remote ones before. So I'm sure we can work that out and keep the calendar the same. And I don't think Katrin, I don't think you had any issues.
I did not at this point, at least.
Yeah.
All right. So in confirmation, I don't think we even have to vote on it, but let's do it since we talked about it. Sam? Oh, I'm sorry. Is there a second?
A second. This is Katrin.
That's from Katrin. Katrin. Sorry, Katrin. Got it.
Either which way, yes, sir.
Yasir.
No.
No.
We're not getting, all right, anyway, all right. All in favor, Sam,
Yes.
Pete,
Yes.
Katrin?
And yes.
All right, and that's a yes for me. Topics for upcoming board meetings. Anything that suits your fancy. I think one of the things Chris will add on is a discussion about the Board of Regents, which we'll put into the retreat. We also talked about, I'm just going back to my notes, regarding the diversity population. We're going to talk about that and into the retreat as well. Did I miss anything? Sam, I think I got it.
Yep.
Okay. All right, then nothing new. Chris, I should have clarified this when we approved the agenda, but do we need to go into closed session?
We do not. So you're saved from closed session.
Excellent, thank you. Let the record show that we do not need to have closed session. So that being said, thank you everyone for joining us on our regular board meeting. Katrin and Sam. Sam, hopefully we get to see you next time on video or in person. We'll see how the Delta variant plays out. But thank you everyone for joining. I'd like to make a motion to adjourn the meeting. Is there a second?
Second, this is Sam.
All right, all in favor? Sam,
Yeah.
Pete,
Yes.
Katrin?
Yes.
That is a yes for me as well. Thank you guys. And Chris and the admin team. I'm really, really excited about starting school. I wish you guys all the best. And I just can't even imagine seeing all these kids out there like with their friends, and it's going to be just absolutely glorious. And I'm so proud of you guys for getting the school back on track. It's going to be a great year, and I know we've got some great leaders to make it so. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Good night, everybody.
All
Good
right.
night.
Good night.
meeting is
Ciao.
Adjourned at 8:11 p.m.